Hi and welcome to On the Record, your playbook for tapping India. Today we have a special guest, Yashwanth. He is VP of Sales for Springworks. Springworks is a new age technology company which helps with employee verifications using blockchain based technology. Today we will look at if you are running a remote team or a global employee who is trying to hire in India, what kind of background verification options are available and what is the trend and how to go about it. Thanks Yashwanth, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. Yes. Thanks for taking out time and talking to us.
Sure, it's my pleasure, Naveen. In fact, it's wonderful talking to you on something which I'm really passionate about. And as you know, as you rightly said, Springworks has been doing a lot of work in the HR space. And one of our, I can proudly talk about telling that, okay, one of our very successful product is our background verification. And as you rightly said, background verification is something which is very important, but somehow for some reasons it is taken a back foot for many organizations, not really understanding the value behind it, not understanding if at all background verification is not done in the right time and at the right place. So what could be the kind of challenges at an organization level that an organization could actually kind of go through. And if I need to just talk about some of the very basic things which people have to keep in mind when they're hiring is that there is a lot of risk involved in the organization, both at the employer level and employee level, if the background verification is not done.
So can you give us some insights as to why BGV is so important?
Yeah, so some of the risks that are there in BGV is that we need to understand the reputation of the candidates and then the organizations. And then we'll also have to just maintain the legal implications of running the show, okay, whenever the background verification is not done, because many of the organizations today has to go through a lot of compliances, okay, they have to adhere to the compliances and then they have to just do that. And then if the background verification is not done in the right time, we don't know what kind of candidates are actually coming on board, okay. So if at all for a wrong hire that actually happens, so the organization has to kind of go through a lot of challenges, maybe financially also. I've just got some of the statistics that I can just bring on board. So Forbes, for example, there was a survey that was done in 2018. It actually says that because of wrong hire that has actually happened, right? So there is almost around 75% of the employees who have joined the organization have got involved in some kind of a theft or the other.
Is it?
Yeah, that's a huge number. That's a huge number. Yeah. So in fact, theft could not be necessarily a bigger one, but it could be of any range. Okay, because the credibility of the individuals that we are actually hiring is very important. And then what actually happens is that when we talk about background verification, the employers, basically the background verification is done by the HR folks of the organizations, right? And they're already tied up with a lot of activities within the organization. And like what I mentioned earlier, like background verification takes a back foot for the simple reason that it is not a very recognized activity for the HR folks, basically. So what happens is that the kind of importance that I actually need to be given is kind of not given for the background verification. And when we just talk about these kind of statistics that are there, then the HR people kind of realize, okay, and then we also had incidences where people actually talk to us telling that, okay, somebody has joined the organization, there was a real need for us to hire that kind of a person for a given role. And then later on we realized that, okay, either the candidate has taken the valuable data of the organization or valuable assets of the organization, and then one fine day they just don't turn up, okay. And more importantly, it is a psychological impact on the candidate when a background verification is done, because when we know that somebody has got our personal information, we think 10 times before doing something that Absolutely. Our mind forces us to do.
And especially in today's digital world where everything is tracked, it's really tough for people to escape away.
Yes, yes. So this is something that, okay, that is the psychological impact that actually happens on the candidate. And this 75% is a huge number, like what we actually mentioned.
Right.
And the other thing that we can just talk about is the employee fraud. Mm-hmm. Okay. So what happens is that if we are not doing the right kind of a verification, so we don't even know that, okay, there is the fraudulent employees are actually joining the organization. Okay?
Right.
So we have the statistics from PwC, around 68% of the global intake or the hiring that's happened. So there is a fraudulent information that is given by the candidate. Okay. So candidate could, the fraudulent information could be
falsifying of information.
Yeah, falsifying of the information. Exactly, right word that you've used there. Okay, so maybe the education qualification is not right, or the experiences that they carry is not right. And today, with all the kind of tools and technologies that we've got, changing the document is not very difficult.
Right.
Okay. So
especially if you know that you are not going to be BGV'd.
Correct. Yeah. So we at Springworks have got the right technology in place to see that how we can even see how the document were actually altered. So we go to that extent of looking at it. Awesome. We look at the metadata of the document that is there. Awesome. So that is where it is very
blockchain technology is.
Something that we actually also store the data of an individual, right? So that is where we actually use the kind of technology in the right place. And then we do the in-depth verification, because when somebody is hiring Springworks as an organization for the background verification, it is a multiple fold responsibility for us to give the right report.
Absolutely.
Yeah, just because before we could enter here, I was just talking to one of the gentlemen when they're just asking me that, okay, how are you just managing the remote work with this kind of challenges that could be faced? So yes, to that depth of what we use the technology to say that, okay, where the fraudulent information is there in the document. So today in the digital world, like what you rightly said, we have also seen cases where the candidates quickly take a domain name, okay, and then create a HR ID and the domain name, and then say that, okay, this is the kind of an experience that they've got relevant to the job role that is there, right? Then we also find out when the company was started, okay, right. And then how long the company exists, and multiple checks on the company also we do. So this is kind of the level of verification that we actually
also
do.
I think you also run a risk of unsafe workplaces.
Yes.
If the candidates has not been properly BGV'd, right?
Correct.
So that could risk not just the specific employee to employer relationship. It could also be detrimental in multiple ways as to like unsafe workplace,
correct,
complaints of sexual harassment and
correct,
stuff.
correct.
So I think it is really critical.
Correct.
But so whether it is an in-person or a hybrid team, but at least unsafe workplaces does not turn up much in a remote setup.
Correct.
Right. So there, how do you think, like if you have a right IT amount of infrastructure to track and see if the data theft is not there, do you still recommend a BGV as an important option in a remote setup?
Yes, definitely, whether it is remote or not. See, what happens is every individual has got access to the data, right? Because when we got what is it, the authorized email ID, and then so because most of the data we have got access through the email ID, but a lot of the organizations of course secure their data, and then we definitely see that every individual, first thing is very important that especially in the remote, if I'm just talking specific to the remote culture, I'll just come back to the in-office kind of a culture.
Correct.
So when we're just talking about the remote culture, what actually happens is we educate the employees very clearly. So educating the employees is very important, because we don't meet them face to face, right? So we are always working on the communication kind of thing. And then we also believe in over communication. Okay, what happens is that unless until the communication is very clear, okay, and then precisely it is very clear. So, and we also have to educate the employees in terms of the limitations that they have got, okay, in terms of accessibility, and the organization level also, right? Definitely today we have got all technologies in place, how we can protect the data, okay, and then how the data access can be given at multiple levels. So that is definitely there at an organization level. But at the remote workplace, so like what I just mentioned is that we have to educate the employees very clearly, and also we have to just give them the right kind of an assignments and we have to just enable them with responsibilities. So what actually happens here is that the trust plays a big factor.
Right.
So in the remote kind of a work culture, we have to trust each other, and then we have to just build that kind of a trust with each other to see that, okay, whatever the work is assigned to them, so they kind of do that in the right kind of a way. And then there are multiple organizations who actually do micro monitoring, which we and I personally don't believe in that. And at an organization level also, we are very clear that, okay, we enable the responsibility to every individual. And today individuals are matured enough, right? So they know that, okay, what their responsibilities are. And then of course we have got multiple tracking system in place to see that, okay, whether the work is going on as per the assigned thing or not. And if things are not going on ahead, we always have a meeting, and then we just see that, okay, this is what has to be happening. Either the pace is going slow or the pace is going faster. We communicate, very transparent communication has to be given, because especially our founder Karthik also, as you know very clearly, that, okay, he's very, very clear in terms of the transparency being maintained within the organization. As long as we are transparent with each other, as long as we trust each other, and then we empower that person, right? The moment we empower them, so they get the onus of the work that they're doing.
Right.
Correct?
Right.
So that is what the remote culture actually has to happen, and that is working very good for us. So I was also talking about the financial impact, right? So if we are doing a wrong hiring, so there is one organization which is called as the American Staffing Association. So some of the I was just reading an article some time back, and then it was mentioning to me, telling that okay, one wrong hire, if it goes to a lawsuit, it's not only the time that is consumed in terms of handling that situation, but also in terms of the monetary thing. It is also understood that somewhere around $175,000 is what is being spent for a wrong hire in terms of
that's a huge
fighting
number.
the suit.
Yeah.
Okay. So generally the organizations or the key people in the organization fail to understand these things, because definitely there is a pressure on every level to hire the right kind of a person within the organization, right?
Right.
So some of these things are overlooked at. And we always say in background verification, everything is good as long as all is well. Okay.
Right. It's but only when something fails, yes, exactly, that you try to figure out.
Exactly. Only when something goes wrong, right, then everybody's antennas rises up. Correct. And then that is the time we actually start losing out on our productive time. And then some of the key leaders within the organization have to kind of undergo a lot of other challenges. So that way I tell that, okay, at whatever level it is, so it is good for the organization to look at the background verification as a very important aspect when hiring the person. And it's not only that, it's also the reputation of the organization and the individual again.
Absolutely.
Because
absolutely.
if an individual is taking a role within an organization, even the individual
also represents the organization.
Yes, represents the organization. The credibility of that individual is also matters a lot.
Absolutely.
Okay, these are some of the things that I've just very important. Just talking about some of the risk mitigations that are there within the background verification.
What kind of background verification options are available today in India? Like if you have to bucketize, what kind of checks are being conducted?
Correct.
If you can give some insights on that.
Good question. Okay. So generally we have got almost on, if you just go deep in the background verification, which some of the roles really demand. Okay, we have got almost on 24, 25 kind of checks that we actually do. But to just mention some of the verifications checks are that ID verification is very important. In fact, one of the articles I was just looking at was even the identity theft is also becoming very common these days.
Right.
Okay. So we just do the identity verification of an individual, and then as per the norms of the data protection and the norms of individuals' data that we can just take, right? We actually get the data from the right sources. So wherever the right sources are there, not that okay we go to some of the data banks that are there which is not an authorized data bank, we don't do the verification there because we are not very sure on the authentication of the data that's there.
Right.
So we actually get the verification from the right source itself. Okay, so ID verification is something that we actually do, and then we also do the address verification, which is very important, because the moment we look at the address verification, and I need to talk proudly about telling that okay, address verification, Springworks actually did something on the digital verification of the address verification, because we actually tagged the lat long of the individual.
Right.
Because earlier the practice was, in the traditional way of doing the verification, was doing the physical address verification.
Right.
But physical address verification comes with its own challenges.
Right.
Okay, we have to just do multiple visits. So we do the digital way of doing the address verification. Accuracy is very high. Okay, and we do the educational qualification. We do the previous employment verification we do. One is the employment to see that okay, whether the individual has worked in the defined organization or not. On top of it, we also do the reference check of an individual. So the reference check happens with the reporting manager or the organization or the HR. We do the reference check because while in today's, when you ask the right question sometime back, telling that okay, about the work culture of an individual and then the challenges that comes along with that. So it's also equally important that okay, how is the behavioral pattern of an individual?
Correct.
Okay, an individual, say for example, I might be very good at my work and I'm excellent at my work, but if my behavioral pattern is not good, the whole atmosphere is kind of corrupted, right? So that is something that we also do. And then we also look at the soft skill side of an individual. Okay, so how well behaved the individual is with the peers, with the clients. Today, almost every individual of an organization demands some way or the other, they have to just do the client facing kind of a thing. So it could be an opportunity that is there. So that is something that we do. And then we also do the social media check of an individual.
Awesome.
Okay, say for example, if you're just talking about an individual who has worked in multiple different countries, right? So we do that social media verification wherever the digital footprint of an individual is there. We also try to do the their pattern of their behavior on the social media check. We do the criminal record check, which is very important. Awesome. Okay, whether a person has some kind of a criminal background. Okay, not criminal background, not has to be at a very high level. Any FIR that could be registered on that individual. Right. It could also be related to the property. It could be related to a road accident. It could be anything that could be there.
Right.
The criminal record check is being done. Drug test that is being done.
Awesome.
Okay, because the kind of access people have got these days, somehow the other people find out.
Right.
They know the loops and holes where they can figure out that is something that we do, which is very important.
Awesome.
So that also is something that is done. Okay, like this we have got multiple checks. We also do the media check we do. Okay, so whether somebody has got the political influence. Okay, so whether they are involved in your
actually, yeah,
very important. Okay,
politically exposed person.
Exactly,
kind of
that's the right word. A politically exposed person is what we also do that. This is also something very important because these are all actually adds up to the good work environment within the organization.
Absolutely.
Yes.
How about global database verification? Yes. What is that?
Okay. So global database verification is about, say for example, I worked in multiple countries. I've done my education in different countries. So we just find out the complete information of that individual who has worked in different countries, their footfall that is there. Like it is something similar to what you just spoke about, the social media verification, about their social media presence or the digital footprint. When we're talking about the global verification of an individual, so they would have worked in different countries, so we also do the verification check of those countries, so which company they have worked, so we do the employment verification of those countries. Education, if they have done the education in different countries, we do the education check on those different countries. So globally, wherever they have actually moved around, traveled around, we do the complete verification of all those things.
And when you say global, is it really global or you cover only a specific geography?
It is global. It is really global. So wherever, say for example, any of the English-speaking countries, right, it becomes very easy for us to communicate with them and then get the verification done.
Right.
So education verification, the employment verification, address verification, these are the something that we can do at the global level.
So some of the global companies who's hiring in India, right, either through an EOR or having a direct teams here, what kind of checks would you recommend, like, or what trends you are seeing with these global companies? What kind of trends you see in the industry to be running these checks?
Yeah, it's a good one, because today we see that, okay, a lot of companies are hiring people globally because of the access that they've got, be it remote or be it within the office. Yes, so some of the AORs, that kind of verification that we do is their employment verification is something which is very important, and we also need to just do the education qualification verifications. And whatever is applicable to Indian context is similarly applicable to Indian context, because what happens is every country has got their own compliances that we have to adhere to. Okay, right. So depending on the country's compliances, we have to just do all these kind of verifications, especially if an organization is looking at adhering themselves to the compliances, because not every organization are very keen on the compliances. So if some organizations are very keen on the compliances, there are a set defined checks that we have to do, and these are some of the checks that we actually generally do for the EOR kind of an employees.
So what would be your suggestion to run these checks compliantly and smartly? Because they are sitting at a distance, they are not having somebody is not sitting out of India, a decision maker or something. So how can they run this compliantly and smartly? Okay,
so when people need to run these checks smartly and compliantly is very important aspect, because today what happens with the kind of trend that is there, we can't even run these checks for a longer duration, because we cannot keep the candidate waiting for a longer duration, because the candidate will already be having multiple options in their hand. So one of the things that we have to just look at is that any organization has to hire a firm or a company who are themselves compliant, because they know the challenges, what actually is required, and then they can relate to it very clearly. Okay, one of the things that's very also important is that they'll have to hire a company who got the technology right kind of a platform. Right. Okay, so that manual errors can be avoided.
Errors and speed both.
Speed. I was about to come to that next point. Speed is something which is very important, because what happens is that whenever we are using the right kind of a platform, and the platform takes care of it, and then the errors are minimized. Okay, we cannot tell zero. It is definitely minimized to a large extent, and then automated processes happen. Okay,
Right.
say for example, if I need to just talk about company that you're hiring, if they're not technically compliant, okay, and if they're not able to integrate with their existing systems that are there,
Right.
and it is too much of an additional work for the HR folks. And like what I mentioned in the beginning when we just started, the HR people already come with a lot of responsibilities on their head, and then they might not have the kind of time that is required to just key in everything that's important. And most of these organizations, if we're just talking about today, they've got the data in a specified format, in a defined way, in some kind of place. Say for example, they must be using some kind of a HRMS in place. And if the background verifying product is not ready for an integration with that HRMS, so then it becomes a double work for the
Absolutely.
HR
For
people.
sure. Yeah.
So they'll have to see that, okay, how that integration happens seamlessly, okay, and then the data that is already available there is just pushed to our background verification, and then the process starts from there. So it goes to the different buckets. You just asked me some time back, right, how that buckets actually goes. That it goes to different buckets. Every team will actually take care of the verification. The speed actually increases, and then we'll be able to give the almost accurate kind of verified report to them within a given point in time.
So how much time typically a BGV takes, and what is the right timing of conducting a BGV? Like, so as soon as I roll out an offer letter,
Yes.
or after the employee joins the organization?
Correct.
Because many times in countries like India, as you know, like a lot of people you roll out to offer letters, there are no show-ups as well, or they don't choose to
Very
accept the offer at some point in the future.
Correct. Correct.
So what is that right timing, and how much time it takes to conduct BGV?
So first question first. Okay. So the right timing to take up the BGV is definitely a business call, but we being in the industry, we could recommend a few good practices
Right.
to retain the candidate. So one of the practice is to see that, to give the confidence to the candidate, telling that, okay, some process is happening from my end in my candidature and then my employment. So some organization trigger the BGV verification when the offer letter is rolled out.
Right.
So generally they've got the 30 days of period for joining time, right? So within that the verification keeps on happening, and then they also are confident that just like how the employer is wants to have the candidate at the right time, similarly the candidate also should be given that confidence that, okay, this employment is guaranteed employment for them. So to give them that kind of a confidence, this background verification can keep happening.
So what you are saying is, in fact, BGV can help to ensure higher show-up rate for potential hires.
To an extent, yes, definitely yes.
Awesome.
Okay, that is something that, okay, that definitely works out. Okay, and then some of the employees, the founders of some of the companies have told us that, okay, we started a BGV verification and then gave them that confidence, and we are able to hire them in the right time. So that's something that is that actually helps. But otherwise, it's a business call. Some organizations, because there is definitely a small cost involved in that. So some people would like to do the verification after somebody joins the organization.
Right.
Okay, so people do that verification then. And to come to your second part of the question, so generally the BGV verification happens anywhere between 7 days to 10 to 12 days kind of a thing. The complete report actually happens. In fact, Springworks as an organization, we are technically so equipped that, okay, we have got some APIs to call to the right sources, and some of the verifications can happen as early as 24 hours.
Awesome.
Okay, so for example, ID verification, the criminal record check verification, and if the candidate supports us and then cooperates with us, the address verification can happen quickly. So
So the basic checks can be done really quick, and then the advanced checks can continue to follow.
Yes, 24 hours to 48 hours, the checks are readily available, and that also shows up in a platform, in the dashboard that we actually give it to the customers. So that also gives the confidence the customers, telling that, okay, yes, these are all people have gone through. That not only helps the employer to decide to continue hiring this candidature or not, and at the same time the candidate also will get the feeling that, okay, yes, the work is going on. But otherwise there are some dependencies in terms of the verification, like say for example employment verification. Employment verification might take some time because there is a dependency on a third person. So the person from the previous employer should be available to just respond back to them. So our system also takes care to say that, okay, how that automated reminder emails will go to them, and then we also get that verification done. So typically around 7 to 10, 12 days kind of a thing, we'll be able to generate the report.
So the BGV, I know, involves a lot of data personal and like social media you mentioned and stuff. From an employee perspective, does it pose any privacy challenges or concerns, like the employer has access to these many data, especially things like GDPR and all getting popular? How do you address this, or can you guide us a little bit more on this?
No, it's a very good question, because these days, like what you exactly mentioned, the GDPR as the compliances and then the policies that is actually coming up, every country have got their own policies, and then we have to adhere to the data, and every individual's data is very important.
Right.
Okay. So today, if we are not protecting their data, and then if you're not using the data in the right time, in the right way, I mean, so a candidate has got all the rights to file a suit against the employer first and also the BGV organization. So for that, what we do is that there are some good practices that we actually follow. One is that we take the consent from both the employer and then the candidate, and then that consent very clearly has to define for what purpose are we using the data. Okay, and then we have to limit ourselves to use the data. Okay, within that limitation, we have to use the data. And the second thing is that this is a suggestion to any of the employer. So when they are actually hiring any of the organization, okay, for doing the background verification, they have to just see that, okay, whether that organization have got certain compliances in place. Say for example, Spring Verify as a product, and then Springworks as an organization. We have got ISO 27701, 27701, which actually is for data protection and then the data security. We are also SOC 2 Type 2, and which is also cyber security kind of a law that we are actually conducting. And then we can talk proudly telling that, okay, Springworks and then Spring Verify is only the product where we have got ISO 27701, 27701, SOC 2 Type 2 certified. So any employer can be very confident of a company like us. So we've got all the compliances in place, and then that actually gives the confidence not only to the employer but even to the employee, telling that, okay, their data is in the safe hands.
But have you seen challenges with sharing that same info with the employer, or do you share only the reports, not the exact information? What's the practice here like?
See, practice, what we actually, I mentioned a couple of minutes back, telling that, okay, we take the consent, right? So when we take the consent, we tell them that, okay, this data is used only for the verification purpose. So when we give the report, okay, we tell them that, okay, we are using the data only to talk to the sources, and then what are the information that we are getting from the source. It is not on any cooked information from any of the background or verification organizations like Springworks. So whatever the information that we get from the source, and then we present in the same fashion with the supporting documents. So that's what. So the report, whatever we give, we are only catalyzers in between. So we generate the report based on the information what we have received. We receive the information from the candidate. Using that information, we talk to the right sources, collate the information, give it in a presentable format with the supporting documents.
Got it.
That is how the report actually
But you haven't seen cases where employees claiming misuse of information by the employers, not from the BGV agency, because you have a one-time requirement, but the employer has the access and the record of all this data. So have you seen any cases where any misuse or any cases being reported in similar direction because of this?
Thankfully, not yet. Okay, maybe because of the stringent policies that we are following internally, and also make it very clear to the employer also, at least at our level, at an organization level. I cannot really comment on anybody else, at least at our level. So we haven't faced that kind of a challenge at any point in time.
Right.
And then our data is pretty clear, and then we make it very clear in the beginning itself as to for what reason we are collecting the data, and then how it is verified, and then how we are presenting it. So thankfully, yes, we haven't.
Yes. Well, thanks a lot, Yashwanth. Hopefully you'd get good insights as to why BGV is critical and how you can go about it smartly and compliantly and in a quicker time. I think it is really becoming important as the world is getting more and more distributed, more and more remote. It is important that BGV should be conducted at appropriate time and in depth. So based on your organizational goals and practices, you should define the level of BGVs that you want to conduct. But it is certainly important to be a compliant organization, to be a good reputed organization. Thanks, Yashwanth, so much for sharing all that information. My real pleasure and good talking to you. Thank you so much.